Good evening. Welcome to our policy committee meeting for October the 25th, 2021. I'll call the policy committee meeting for October the 25th to order. Madam Clerk, electronic statement, please, and then a roll call. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. This meeting is being held as an electronic meeting pursuant to and in compliance with Richmond City Council's Ordinance 2020-093, adopted April 9th, 2020, and extended by Ordinance number 2020-183, adopted August 20th, 2020, and by Ordinance number 2020-232, adopted December 14th, 2020, and the board's resolution approved on April 20th, 2020. Simultaneous translation is being provided tonight in Spanish via Zoom, and the meeting notice contained information on how individuals needing translation services could obtain the service. The meeting notice also stated that the meeting would be a virtual meeting and would be live streamed for the public on the school division's YouTube channel, and the link was provided. The agenda of the meeting was posted to board docs. After roll call, we will state how many board members are participating at the time of roll call. And now we will have roll call. Ms. Gibson.
Here.
Dr. Harris Muhammad.
Present.
Ms. Jones.
Present.
We have a quorum and we have 3 members present.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Good evening again, everyone. Thank you for joining us. We have a member of the superintendent's cabinet here with us, Ms. Hodesco, and we have our school board attorney here. So again, thank you for coming. At this time, I want to review the purpose of the policy committee, and our attorney, Ms. Lilly, may have some additions to what I'm getting ready to share. The purpose of the policy committee, which will be composed of at least 3 school board members, shall meet as determined to consider matters relating to the development and review of policies adopted by the Richmond School Board. The policy committee will ensure that adopted policies are developed in accordance with federal and state mandates and establish priorities and policy review and adoption in consultation with the division superintendent and his or her administration. The school board may appoint additional individuals to the committee who represent the views of various community stakeholders in the development of policies affecting the school division. The full school board retains final approval authority for school division policies. Attorney Lilly, do you have anything to add at this time for the purpose?
No, not at this time. You covered it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So next on our agenda, for those who are watching and who are with us as panelists, we want to talk about the process and procedures of reviewing our policies and also submitting policies as a policy committee to the entire school board for a first and second read. Ms. Lilly, do you have any policies that you would like for us to consider before I go over the process and procedures?
There are a few that I added to board docs just as a introductory measure, if you will, and I can explain a little bit later after you go through the process to review. But I thought that it may be best to start with just some of the areas where you all have established your philosophy in certain areas, in the business section, the community relations section, the instruction section, as well as the auxiliary services section for present. And I thought, and again, it could be subject to however you all want to do this, it may be best to start with those because that sets the tone for the rest of the policies that are created in that particular section. And it would be something that you all can add, add your input to. Whereas some of the other policies may or may not be able to change given the requirements of the law. I thought that it may be best, and again, it's subject to however you all want to do that. And we do need to establish a schedule and all of that kind of stuff. But for tonight, since you asked for a few policies, I brought some of the philosophy policies to your attention tonight.
Yes. Okay, so committee members, and your feedback and your collaboration is important in this process of reviewing our policies. But one of the processes and procedures that is critically important is that as a policy committee, we submit policies that we feel or in review with the attorney and with Ms. Hudesco to submit for review to the entire school board for at least 2 reads. If we think as a committee that we would need 2 reads, we are all open to that, and please share that communication. I am aspiring or suggesting that we meet every other month. And the reason why I'm suggesting that, committee members, is because we need to have time to not only review as a committee the policy that we would like to be reviewed, but also we need to give our board members time to review the policies that we submit for review while providing them the first and second read. Are there any suggestions at that time with that suggestion? That's a suggestion. Ms. Gibson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think that sounds fine as a, moving forward approach. There may be value in having another meeting since we're just now starting up before December, but that makes sense to me. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Gibson. And you're right, it may, because we're just starting up and there are several policies. I know that I would like to share. You may have a few that you would like to share. And Ms. Jones, do you have anything to add in terms of how we move forward, possibly having another meeting prior to December? But once we get the warmth and the wheel turning, I don't expect for us to meet every month.
Sorry about that. Yeah, I'm open to the meeting cadence. I think the only thing would be helpful going forward for the next meetings is if I could get a copy of the agenda and whatever other items we may need to review before the meeting. That'd be super helpful.
Absolutely. Thank you, Ms. Jones. So I want to reiterate for those that are watching that, yes, ma'am, Ms. Hudesco, I'm sorry, I got to get used to the hand thing. So.
Not a worry. I just wanted to get clarity from you and the other committee members about what you would prefer the role of the administration to be in this work. Would you be perhaps suggesting policies that you, from the seat you sit in, would like us to work with this group and Miss Lilly to revise? Or would you like us to bring the next policy in the queue that we might be bringing up? So for example, we had brought the technology policy to the board, given the new website and the inclusion of the cookies policy. Would I be bringing then that policy to this committee first for your review, or were we thinking that these were parallel tracks? We should continue to bring things to the board as a whole as they come up, and this group is kind of digging in from a different angle, or should this be the gatekeeper by which we bring policies we're hoping to get a board review on?
Thank you, Ms. Hudesco. And that's a part of our conversation tonight. And I would like to hear, because this is a collaboration effort, and I would like to hear from the committee members on how they think we should move forward with your suggestion. And those are valid points that you're making. And I will share after Ms. Gibson and or Ms. Jones have something that they would like to share. Ms. Gibson?
Thank you. I think that from my perspective, it would make sense for the normal cadence, the normal policy approach that we're taking. I mean, if there's something that needs to come and we know it needs to come to the whole board, I don't personally see it's necessary for the policy to serve as a gatekeeper. I don't want to slow down the process in any way. I think that the time that this committee meets, would be perhaps best suited towards those initiatives that are not already slated to be reviewed and potentially adopted.
Thank you, Ms. Gibson. Mrs. Jones, do you have anything?
No, I'm good. I think that's a good starting plan. I mean, because at some point we will have to work with the administration, and it just as long as they are aware of the policies that we are working on, so that we're not duplicating efforts. I think that would be, the best way to move forward. But again,
Yes, ma'am.
Any processes.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. So, Ms. Hudesco, my point is that the policy committee and the administration works in direct collaboration, but we are not putting a block in what the administration is working on in terms of policy bringing to the entire board. Because if we were to take that stance, because of the way that the policy committee will meet moving forward, the policy that the administration may present to us prior to presenting to the school board, we may be holding that up unintentionally, if that makes sense. So I would like the policy committee to just work in collaboration and not be the one to have the gatekeeper of the policies that you want to submit or that the administration wants to submit. So we would not be a roadblock to that. But as a courtesy through the attorney, submit what, for example, the technology policy that could have come to us if we had met before, so we could take a look at it. And if it was anything that we needed to speak to strengthen it, we could have. And that's just an example that I'm using, but I would like for the administration to continue in the model in which they have done thus far. Okay, awesome. Yes, Ms. Lilly.
I just wanted to put on the radar as well, just so that this committee, however you fold it in, you want to make sure that the policies as a whole, before you dig, and I know I brought several as requested forward, but you want to incorporate a wholesale kind of review from, whatever section you want to take on of the policies, because you're required by your policy to review them and make any changes if necessary every 5 years. And while some of your policies have been reviewed within the requisite time, others have not. And so if you all would like for me to, I did put in the on board docs, just a table of contents so that you can have it at your hand without having to go to board docs of all of the policies that are in board docs, right? So you can see them broken down from section and whatever article they're in. And so it may be necessary to incorporate, and I don't know, policy, this work is going to be extensive. So it may be necessary to incorporate, several sections of at least review. It doesn't mean that you have to revise them, but at least review in each section in each meeting, so that you're covering that if the policy committee is to serve as that vehicle, which it's done in the past. In the past, the policy committee has gone from section 1 to section 8 and looked at each of the policies, made any changes that are necessary, and brought those changes to the board. And that way they've done that work. Overall as well, you want to make sure that, there's some, as we get into it, there are some language changes wholesale that need to be made. For example, pupils, using the terminology pupils rather than, we want to use the terminology students rather than pupils. There's also some language that VSBA has kind of changed to be more, I guess, user-friendly, shall to will, those types of things that as we move forward, we can incorporate that. So I would encourage some type of schedule that you're at least looking at chunks of them at a time, so that you can at least have met that obligation.
Thank you. So as a review, for those who are watching, we are going to continue with the administration. And this is just the educator in me. I always review in the middle of a lesson to check for understanding. So we're going to continue to work with the administration as they bring forth policies to the school board. The policy committee would not operate or function in the avenue of being a gatekeeper or thus a roadblock when the administration is presenting policies to the entire school board for review for first and second read. The policy committee, thus as stated earlier, will review policies that are in immediate attention that have not been reviewed or is out of the window of 5 years. We would then work together to present those policies to the school board for a first and second read. Also, as a check for understanding, because we're just starting, we are not going to wait to December to have another meeting. One, because of the sense of urgency with some policies that we need to review, and as stated earlier by the attorney, some language that we need to review, revise, and add or change in some of our current policies. Attorney Lilly, did I summarize that up pretty good?
That's fine. Yes,
Okay.
that was good. And you know, I just had an idea with, and we can talk about that later. The
Okay.
language changes, we can decide as a group, or you all can decide as a group what you want, right? We don't have to go to each policy and say, we want to change this, we want to change that. But if the idea is that overall, let's change the word pupils to students, that's done. You know, we can make sure that that's done. Let's change the shells to wills and those types of things that, those are decisions that you all can make. And we don't, each time we look at a policy, we don't have to check for that. You all would have made that decision and we will incorporate those changes as we move forward or wholesale. And then you all can address the substance of that policy.
And again, we want to make sure that we give the entire school board time to have, I think our practice is at least 2 reads on a policy. And then after 2 reads, the following school board meeting after the second read, it's on the agenda for a vote. Yes, ma'am, go ahead.
It's the second read that is the vote.
I'm sorry, the second read that is the vote. Thank you for
Typically,
clarifying that.
but it has gone beyond that before, but typically it's on that second read that you are voting.
So what I would like to do, colleagues, is continue with that practice of on the second read, when we're presenting a policy to the entire board for review, that on that second read, we vote that night. And if there's any heartburn or difference of opinion about a policy that we're getting ready to submit, I would like for the temperature to be that we kind of walk through that as a committee before we take it to the board. Ms. Gibson, Ms. Jones, what do you all think about that? So we won't have to spend 45 minutes to an hour talking about this policy when we should have already vetted it as a policy committee. Ms. Jones, what do you think?
I'm cool with it.
Okay.
Yeah, I understand the practice.
Okay, Ms. Gibson?
That makes sense to me as well.
Okay, awesome. Mrs. Lilly, do you need to share your screen to show us the policies that you brought forth per my request? Or?
Sure, I can do that.
Okay, thank you. And also, while Ms. Lilly is doing that, committee members, if you have a policy that you would like for us to review, you can submit that to me and Ms. Lilly, and we can talk about it in preparation for our next meeting. Ms. Gibson, yes, ma'am.
I do have several policies that I'd like to include in our review.
Yes, ma'am. I'm ready.
Okay. So one is regarding the timing for our school board meetings. There's currently scheduled, obviously, on Mondays, the first and third Mondays of the month. There had been some discussion about changing the date or the day to a Tuesday. I think it's important that we have a policy in place that says that if we are going to change the schedule for school board meetings to, the regularly scheduled school board meetings, for instance, from a Monday to a Tuesday, that would require a unanimous vote from the board. Because, if we have folks that have been elected into office and they've made plans for a certain time, I think, obviously there are times when it makes sense for a majority to rule, but I think for something like this, where we're talking about a change that is significant and impacts everyone on the board, that would require a unanimous vote. Another item that I would like for this board to review or to consider is the timeline for calendar adoption. There have been, lots of changes to the calendar as of late. And one thing that we've heard from many folks is just the late timing in which our calendar has been adopted, particularly in contrast to the counties, which have already finalized their calendars, for instance, for the upcoming school year. And I don't know exactly what the cadence is, but I do believe that we should have policy in place to ensure that we are reviewing those so that parents and staff can make their plans accordingly. The third thing on my list is regarding staff time schedules. That's policy 7-3.6. We have heard loud and clear from teachers and staff about their workload, about concerns with planning periods. There was a time when folks were asked to come in earlier, they have to leave later. These are things that I think do require some significant consideration so that we can ensure that we are considerate to the demands that we're putting on our staff. And then the final one is policy 3-3.6, which relates to the pay schedule in which we pay our staff. And I want to read the language as it stands right now. Let me look for it. This is payment and payroll procedures. So right now the language says all compensation for salaries, wages, and supplements paid to employees will be paid in accordance with an annual salary schedule approved by the school board. Records that accurately reflect the compensation and related benefits of each employee will be maintained. All compensation to employees shall be paid in the most economically efficient manner possible. That language is really allowing us as a district to pay our staff essentially whenever we want. And, we have hourly staff that are working overtime and are having to wait beyond the what's a reasonable cadence in terms of paying those folks. As our hourly staff right now, these are the staff the positions that we're having the hardest time filling, and it's imperative that we are paying these folks on time. I took kind of thinking a bit about what that policy could say. I'm thinking something along the lines of, hourly employees will be paid weekly. All wages, including overtime, will be paid no longer than 2 weeks after it is accrued. Standard pay periods for salaried employees are the 1st through the 15th of the month and the 16th through the last day of the month. So that we are basically making a commitment to ensure that our hourly employees are not having to wait. Thank you.
Thank you. So, Madam Attorney and Ms. Hudesco, are our hourly employees not being paid in accordance with the current policy 3-3.6?
No, we're paying people according to policy. I think Ms. Gibson was suggesting that she would want them paid weekly instead of on the 1st and 15th, which is how folks are paid now.
Thank you. So when we review the language in this policy, would it be helpful, colleagues, to maybe have someone from payroll or the finance committee or the finance office to come and join us and talk about any barriers, the positives, the good, the bad, and the indifferent with this policy, instead of the policy committee saying, yes, this sounds good. Of course, we want our hourly employees. And I think one of the concerns that I've had with our hourly employees is that there may be a longer break during the winter holiday before they get paid again because of the time that we're out. So they're not working during that time that we're out because they're hourly. Maybe some hourly employees still work over the winter break. But Ms. Hudesco, go ahead.
The first thing, I definitely agree with you. And so it's super helpful to hear the kinds of policies that are on the committee members' minds, because I do think it would be important to hear from, for example, in this particular one we're talking about, from the payroll team, just what capacity it would take to process payroll once a week versus every other week, for example, and that may have staffing implications that we want to consider, just using it as example. So love the idea of knowing a little bit this kind of queue of the kinds of things you're interested in, and then I can help get information from the administration to bring back to this group just to inform thinking around that. And then just as a technical note to your second question, all RPS employees are paid on a different schedule, a compressed schedule between Thanksgiving and the winter break, because the payroll team is off over the winter break as well. So that's sometimes what you hear is there's a longer gap in pay between December and January. It's not a decrease in pay, but it does require a little bit of discipline of staff because they don't get paid on the same every 2 weeks, because they got paid in a very condensed way in the winter, early winter.
So just for those who are watching, they may be current RPS employees. We pay them, I think, on our calendar. So our last day for the winter break is December the 17th. I'm trying to put the calendar in my head. I have several calendars in my head, so I may be speaking from my calendar.
Yeah.
So, and let me just use that as an example. So let's say their last day before winter break is December the 17th. So they would get paid on the 15th of December and the 17th of December, or the 15th of December and the 31st of December.
I don't want to misspeak, but there will be a condensed payroll cycle basically between Thanksgiving and New Year's, and then they get paid again on January 15th. So those paychecks are
Gotcha.
compressed because they're not getting paid on January 1st.
Right. So my example could be it.
Yeah,
Because it's
I don't
it
know
could
about
be
the
somewhere
exact
around
date,
there. Okay.
but philosophically, yes, there's a condensed.
Something like that. Okay. All right. And then I would like to go ahead and share with you, Ms. Hudesco, what's on my radar. One of the things that's on my radar is our student discipline policy in terms of out of school suspensions. And so what do I mean by that? How and what we report for a automatic 10-day suspension, I am understanding is not the same in every building. For example, i.e., a student has a hunting knife, small blade in the backpack. It is discovered throughout the school day. Parent is called, child is picked up from school, the child returns the next day. That's school A. In school B, child has a pocket knife, walks through the metal detectors. It is noticed. And according to the policy, because that's a weapon, suspension, and then a student hearing. So some of these similar situations are not being treated the same way. So it's not equitable. So I would like to look at our discipline policy regarding out of school suspension, and we can work with Ms. Lilly to, just demystify that and break that up, because I want us all to say, well, it's all done the same way in every school, but unfortunately it's not. And so how we craft, and I know we have adopted the S-bar, so that is going to help us, because that language in many of the S-bar policies or the S-bar, the new student behavior administrative response is clear, but in some instances, when it comes to K-5, middle and high, it's some wiggle room. So I'm afraid that we still have too much wiggle room, even with the S-bar that has come out in terms of the code of conduct for students.
If I may, just a couple of comments related to that. So I think, and I know it was simply an illustrative example, but
yes, ma'am.
The score that the board, so I would say the score would be the place where those policies live that the board did did just approve.
Mhm.
And the example, for example, with a knife is actually Virginia code. But I think you've identified what I think are two other important distinctions that may or may not be part of this committee. It's the kind of tiering effect down of there's a board policy, there's administrative procedures. How does a policy, which should be general and not overly specific in theory, and that administrative procedures are drafted to implement that policy effectively. But then, of course, there's the third piece around just the consistency of such.
Correct.
And so you may have the exact right policy that you want on paper.
Okay.
And so that may mean that a particular topic is not the purview of this committee, but instead is a directive from this committee to the administration to ensure that the policy, there are clearer administrative procedures related to the policy, or that they are being upheld with consistency. Because an inconsistent implementation of the policy does not necessarily mean, in my opinion, that you would need a new policy, but it certainly requires some follow-up.
Correct. And also a follow-up is that because of the inconsistency in the procedure and the inconsistency of applying the procedure, it makes the policy not work. And so I've started at the top, and like you said, tearing down, we may need to work on that middle part where the policy committee sends a professional directive to say all situations that occur within this SBAR code, the SCORE code, must be followed with the same procedure and consistency. So it would not be, it's done this way in school A, and then a similar situation occurs in school B, and not the same deliverance of the procedure. So that is, I don't know about other board members that are present, but that is some of the calls that I have received this year is about the inconsistency of applying the student code of conduct. Anything else, board members? I just want to remind us at 7:06. Yes, Ms. Gibson, thank you.
Yeah, so a couple of things. Going back to the point about the salary schedule, right now, there is no policy with any commitment to any type of schedule. It's not in our policy. It just says we're going to pay people when it benefits us the most financially. So it's not even, so whether we say we're paying hourly folks 1 week or 2 weeks, I mean, my hope is just that simply we state what that timeline is and commit to it, because that doesn't exist right now. So if people are not getting paid within a reasonable time frame, they have no recourse, because we haven't developed any policy that says when we're going to pay people. We're just basically saying we'll pay you when we feel like it. On the topic of the administrative policy, I mean, I think that basically the issue is that the administrative policy is very, very old. And so I would welcome input from Ms. Hadasco in terms of the timing for making revisions. I think, the reason why we don't see consistency from building to building is simply because the administrative policies are so old that I don't know that people can kind of interpret whether or not they still apply or not. So I think that's the kind of the larger issue as it pertains to that. Yeah, I mean, I think that, in terms of SCORE, I understand that is related to that SCORE document. But I'm open to, whether it makes sense to review those items in this committee as well.
Thank you, Ms. Jones. And then Ms. Lilly, I'll come to you.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I was just wanted to be able to ask if I could get some time to review the list of policies, because I didn't know in advance that we were supposed to, so I apologize. And there may be ones also that I would like to maybe address. And I want to say thank you for this conversation. I feel like it's really great in moving us towards the things that we've been talking about for a while.
Absolutely.
As it relates to teachers, students, staff, faculty, et cetera. So I do think that this is a great start there, and looking forward to seeing things unravel or unfold. And I want to also just make sure, I think Ms. Gibson spoke to it, but I just reiterate just to make sure the difference between where we serve and what the administration's role is, because I don't want to seem like we're using this policy committee to overstep in any kind of way. And you mentioned earlier that it is collaboration. So I'm looking forward to that. And I think that the things that we are bringing forward are good, conversations we should talk about, because it's only going to make, things better across the district. So thank you. And I'll get my policies once I review it to you for the next meeting, or I'll send it to you and Ms. Gibson.
Yes, ma'am. Attorney Lilly. And no, it was not required, Ms. Jones, that you needed to have policies. Ms. Gibson reached out to me and said if she could, and I said, sure, that would give Ms. Hudesco, Ms. Lilly, some information that what we're thinking about as a policy committee. And to be clear, and just not to repeat what anyone has indicated, our job as a policy committee is not to govern the administration. It is to govern the division with equitable policies and ensuring that the policy, because this is the work that we do. Policy is the work that we do. And so it has to be in collaboration with the administration, because once we set the policy as a whole board, then the expectation is for the superintendent to then direct his team to ensure that the policies are employed. And so thank you so very much. Ms. Lilly, go right ahead.
I was just going to, say a couple of things as far as the interplay between, I wasn't going to say this first, but this came up, the interplay between the administration and this committee. As you'll see in a lot of the policies, it's great for the board to have, the board needs to know how things are happening practically every day in the school division for that particular policy that's on the books now, to consider whether or not it needs to change it or not. It can change it, but then you want to know at least what implications it may have for change, for unintended consequences, how those things work, and the administration would be able to be key in raising those issues. The other piece that I wanted to bring to the table so that you all are aware, I think that it would be good, Dr. Harris-Mohammed, I brought philosophy policies, but if you all want, since you already have your list, we can start with these, not necessarily tonight, but we can do two things. Maybe a chunk of, when I say a chunk, not a whole lot, but a chunk of maybe 4 or 5 policies that need to be reviewed because of time. And then the listing that you all have can be kind of the slate of policies that we start with. If that's how you want to kind of do that. What I'll also bring to the
I'm sorry, go ahead. No, please.
What I also bring to the what I will also bring to the table are policies that the VSBA model policies. Some of your policies, a lot of them are based off of the VSBA model policy. So I'll make sure that those are accompanying those policies for your consideration. Does it have to be exactly alike? No, but you may want to know what your VSBA organization has suggested in these particular areas. And I will also make certain that if there are policies that are housed in different sections that talk about the same topic, because sometimes they do, I'll make sure that they're grouped together as well, so that I've scrubbed the policy to make sure that, well, the listing that that Ms. Gibson brought, a couple of them may have some they may be cross sections. So I will make sure that I scrub those to make sure that there are any policies other than in these sections that talk about these issues, calendars, schedules, payroll, that those are brought to the table so that they are being reviewed at the same time.
And in addition to, Madam Attorney, we need to make certain that we are reviewing the policies in conjunction with what has already been brought to us this evening that are over 5 years, that haven't been reviewed we have to maintain compliance with that.
Yes.
And so that is a concern of mine. The other policy suggestions that we have, absolutely. So committee, we know we got work. And then Ms. Jones is going to take some time and look at things based on what her constituents have shared, or our staff and her schools have shared, maybe or maybe not, but things that she may be hearing on the ground that wasn't an immediate radar, but is now because the policy committee is in place. It is, I just want to be clear that for those who are watching, a policy review is not an immediate review, if that makes sense. A policy review takes time because you have to make sure that, one, the code, the language that we are applying and the change that we're putting in the policy is following the Code of Virginia language. That's one. And I'm just summarizing. I may not have it all perfect like an attorney would have it. And two, that the administration has had time as well to vet it. Now, those things can work in alignment and almost at the same time, right? But when we come to the policy committee meetings, we want to be able to push that work out and be ready to submit that work that we reviewed to the board so we can remain in compliance. Ms. Hudesco, I think you had your hand raised.
I was going to echo Ms. Lily's point about using VSBA or even looking at neighboring divisions at some instances, how they might think about different policies might be advised. But again, the model policy is great. And that will help us also, I think, keep the right lens of when something is a policy or an administrative procedure. And I think this committee having a clear perspective on the level of granularity in one versus the other will be important.
Oh, it's clear. It's very clear. I'm gonna make sure it's clear. But we may, at a point, Ms. Hudesco, have some heartburn with how the administrative procedure is done. And we just want to be able to share that friendly so we can tighten that up so we won't have a policy issue, if that makes sense.
That's the collaboration right there.
What? Say it again, Ms. Jones.
That's the collaboration right there.
That's a collaboration right there. Correct. That's a collaboration right there, because I'm all about collaboration. So we want to make sure that it's done, because at the end of the day, it has to be equitable for all students in our division and our staff. And so just in a recap, because of 716, Ms. Gibson shared the timing for the school board meetings. We need a policy to discuss that. Timeline for calendar adoption. We need a policy to address that. Policy 7-3.6, the staff time schedules. And again, ladies and gentlemen, those who are watching, this is just a quick summary. 3-3.6, the pay schedule. I have put on the floor when we begin to review that to have someone from the finance team or payroll team to be present so they can talk about how that looks. And then I mentioned about how we carry out our out of school suspensions, and Ms. Hudesco indicated it was a tiered effect, the board policy, the administrative procedure, and the consistency. And then I followed up by saying sometimes that it's the application of the procedure, which is not consistent with the policy. Ms. Gibson?
Thank you. I would request that at our next meeting, if Ms. Hudesco or someone from the administration could speak to the timing for making updates to the administrative procedures, because I think that they are, I think some of them haven't been updated since like the 90s. And so I'm wondering, I think it would be helpful to have a sense of when those are going to be updated, because again, I don't know that the alignment is there, and I think that's really critical and overdue.
Correct. Thank you, Ms. Gibson. I appreciate that. Anything else for the good of the order? It is 7:17. We're finishing a few minutes early. Ms. Lilly?
Just so that I'm being helpful, would it be best if I just pull the policies because there are policies that speak to, of course, all of what Ms. Gibson's list was, so I can pull those policies. Of course, they'll be subject to your review and modification for our next meeting. pull the policies that deal with the out-of-school suspensions that are outside of school, because there are some that are outside of school that are housed in the board policy manual, as well as any companion policies that the VSBA may have on those topics, so that you all can at least review those and be ready to, I guess, share your input on how you want those to be changed at the next meeting. I can do that within the next few days. If you
Committee, is
wish.
that okay with us? Ms. Jones?
I was just gonna say also really quickly, if we could get, I guess, the meeting schedule as soon as
Yes.
possible, just so that I can get that on my calendar. 'Cause
Absolutely.
November and December is super busy, so.
Yes, ma'am.
The sooner I know, the better.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. And I'm going to be working with Ms. Patrice Richardson to make sure that we are not meeting on another committee day, finance, other committees that we have within the school board that operate and function and support the governance of our division. It looks like right now we'll be meeting on Mondays because of the other committee meetings during the week. Around 6:30, does 6:30 work for everybody? I was thinking, getting home and so I'll work with Ms. Richardson to send that out to the committee, as well as Ms. Hudesco. Make sure she has it. Okay. Oh, is he allowed? Can I see your credentials, young man, to be a part of this meeting? Hi, cutie. We had a visitor. Okay, so we had a visitor. All right, if there is nothing else, it is 7:20. I love it when we can end before the scheduled time. Thank you all so much for being here. If there is nothing else, may I have a motion to end our first policy committee meeting for October the 25th?
I move that we end the meeting as our first policy committee.
At 7:20. Can I get a second?
Second.
Thank you. Good night, I'm sorry, Ms. Richardson, we got to vote, right? Do we have to vote? It was a motion.
Yes, ma'am. Once we put it out there, we have to vote on it. So
We got to vote. That's right.
All
Thank you for keeping us tight and right, Ms. Richardson.
all right, Ms. Jones,
Yes.
Ms. Gibson,
Yes.
Dr. Harris Muhammad,
No, I think we should. No, I'm just playing. Yes, we can. Yes.
motion passes unanimously.
Thank you all. Have a great evening and have a great rest of the week. Bye-bye.
Thank
Thank
you,
you so much
everyone.
for your work.
Good night.
Bye-bye.
Good night.
Good night.